Hello and welcome to SoftPeak. Today we're going to have a look at WordPress in Azure specifically. Continuing off from the previous episode, in this series we call SoftPeak. It's about a startup and experiences around digital literacy and artificial intelligence and citizen development, all combined into the concept of how we can work smarter and to have more time to do the things we want to do. So in today's edition, we're going to have a look at what WordPress is and how we can configure it inside Azure, so we can have it side by side with our Microsoft 365 setup. So if I switch back to my tenant here, this is my Microsoft 365 Admin Center of SoftPeak. And I can see I have a user here called Henrik, and I can of course add more users as this organization kind of grows and assign them various subscriptions to various services. But an interesting thing is that Microsoft 365 is also managing its users in something called an Active Directory. So if I go to this portal.azure.com, I can see that we have an Azure Active Directory here, and I can see in that Active Directory a listing of all the users. So it's it's like a mirror. If I open up this one, I can mirror the information here, and if I can also change certain things from here, that it's gonna reflect immediately to Microsoft 365 as well. And this Azure Active Directory is becoming something called Entra ID. So this is an interesting one. It's a naming convention that Microsoft is changing. A new name for Azure Active Directory, it will be called Entra ID. And that's interesting. That's a transition towards the future. So this user, Henrik, has, of course, a couple of licenses, and I can change it from here. I can reset password. I can do various things. I can also do similar things inside Microsoft 365 Admin Center as well. But sometimes it's beneficial to go into the Azure services to do the changes there. If I now go to my other site, almbock.com, I can see here that I have inside the Microsoft Cloud, I have a description of Microsoft 365, what it's all about. And I also have a little section here called Azure and Azure DevOps. It's two different kind of services within the same concept. So if I go into the Microsoft Azure overview, I can have an overview of what Azure is all about. It's a really complex service, Azure. It has tons of different cloud computing services, and it has data centers all over the globe. So it's truly infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and software as a service offering, all combined into a gigantic kind of cloud service. You have AI, machine learning services, analytics services, computing services, container services, database services, developer and DevOps and hybrid and identity, and so much more kind of services aligned in there. There's also a periodic table here, which I can see here from another site. I will link this in the description as well, so you can type this in as well in the description of this this little video. So here we can see, for example, we have management and security, the blue ones, and we have the compute. This is the services, and we have the developer services, and also CDN, content delivery networks, and media services. So this bunch of services. And one of the neat things with Azure overall is that it's typically pay-as-you-go kind of services. So you only pay for what you actually use. Opening up the side panel here, or my sidekick or copilot, as Microsoft naming it, I can ask the Bing service here, what is Azure? And I get a pretty good explanation on what Azure is and how it can benefit me, and I can also deep dive into this, and I can compare it to other cloud services like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. So for example, if I want to, how does it compare? I can use this kind of AI chat functionality to dive even deeper to understand the complexities of what Azure is all about. I can also, in my Yllemo pick up cloud computing here, and I can see that there is a survey from Stack Overflow, which ranks, it's probably a year old or so, but it ranks the various cloud platform services, Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. But there's other ones as well. And there's people out there on the interwebs that create really fancy infographics like this one that you can compare and see how it kind of relates to each other and how it's named. Not all of the services is mapped one-to-one across the board. There is the differences in between the various services and offerings that the various services have. But I think that can be good to understand a little bit more around how this kind of cloud services is working. And it's also interesting to understand that if you have a Microsoft 365 account, you already have Microsoft Azure, and that's where I'm going to continue with this. From Azure to WordPress then. So what is WordPress? I hit it up in Yllemo. WordPress is a pretty not so detailed description, a pretty high overview so far in here. But you can see this Wikipedia extract, and I also asked my sidekick here a question: what is WordPress? And it's a content management system, a CMS, a content management system that allows us to manage websites without having to learn how to code. So it was a system that was created to create websites more easily, and you can also use various themes. So you can upload your themes to WordPress, and you can have tons of them. There is many out there. You can have both free and open source themes, and you can have like commercial themes. And the entire WordPress is built on a programming language called PHP, which is it's been around for quite some time. So I think it was created maybe 20 years ago or something like that. So it's been around for quite some time. And I think that many of the top websites is actually using WordPress as a CMS, a content management system, in order for them to create various content. So if I open up this link to GitHub, I can see GitHub topics. So in GitHub, there is tons of open source toolings, but there's also some interesting things in GitHub called topics, which is kind of like knowledge articles where we can see what people are building around WordPress, for example, or other toolings as well. So there is also lots of extensions around WordPress. So if I go to WordPress.org, we can see what WordPress.org is. So we can see here that it's about if we can grow our business, and that's what we want to do with SoftPeak. So we want to build out a kind of business around this, and in order for this business to grow, we kind of want to have a website that is open for anyone browsing the web to be able to see the website we've been creating, and we want to be able to style it and brand it and make it ours, so to say. Switching over in my sidekick here to the Insights tab, this can give us really intelligent information about the website I'm visiting. I can see that the website, I can see the Wikipedia link, I can see the main link. I can also see some other things. I can see popular videos around it and how to set it up, and lots of resources. So this Insights is really good to have when you're kind of browsing the web and you want to have some additional like meta information on any kind of topic. So if I want to get this and I want to download this, I can of course click on this button here, and I want to get WordPress. I want to get it. So I can see here the recommendation when I download it is that it should be PHP 7.4 or greater. It should have a database. It requires a database. So maybe it should use MySQL 5.7 or MariaDB. Whichever you choose, or whichever you have. So I can, of course, follow the installation guide. or I can just download it. So I can says howdy, thanks for downloading, and there's more information. So there's tons of communities around WordPress. So it's a really huge system. So I downloaded the file here, so I can click on this and I can see if it's what type of file I have here in my folders. So I can see I can open up this one and I can just open with Windows Explorer, something like that, and I see what's inside this kind of WordPress folder. So I can see there's a bunch of PHP source files. Typically when I see an index file, that's the starting point of this. So I can have a look at various content. I also see something called VP Admin, VP Content, and VP Includes. And of course, I can have the option of following a really detailed instruction on how to download it, how to install it, how to configure it, and how to kind of do certain things. But in order for this to run, I need to have a web server for this. So going back here to my downloaded WordPress zip file, cabinet file, I can see that there's a bunch of files in here. And like I said, the index file, let's open that up with Visual Studio Code, which is also a great tool to have installed on your computer. It's a really lightweight coding editor, so I can see it's PHP code, it's flagged as PHP, and it's including other files as well in this, so it doesn't contain very much. But there is a couple of things here that's really interesting to have a look at. That's the settings, for example. That can be an interesting one to kind of see. When you set it up, you kind of need to have various variables that you need to include in your installation. In order for that to work, it can be pretty daunting if you're not experienced in working with kind of like open source web services. But I think those three folders here, VP Admin, VP Includes, and VP Content, those are also of interest. And VP stands, of course, for WordPress. So Admin is a bunch of administrative things, and you have the Includes that are included in the WordPress solution. But I think the Content one is where you install various plugins and various themes. That's where those end up. Back to this kind of how to install. This can be pretty complex. As we can see here on the right-hand side, there is tons of resources that can help you with this, but it can probably take a while to install it properly. There's a bunch of other things that kind of like are important as well. That's the caching functionality to kind of improve and what type of plugins you actually need. And there's a diverse set of instructions and how to configure it in the best possible way. And there's also some support to have along the way to do this. But what we're going to focus on now is how to set it up in Azure. So going back here to my Azure site, I can see that there is a couple of options here. So I can go to the marketplace. That's typically where I want to go to get something new. I can, in the marketplace, I can search, for example, for WordPress like this. And I can see that there's a bunch of different services around WordPress. So even here, even inside Azure, there's different installation configurations with maybe has a different server backends that can have it. But I think the best one I found is actually the one that we have here is the one that we have around this one. It's from Microsoft, so it's really supported. It also gives the best, I think, experience when installing this one. So WordPress on App Service, and WordPress is optimized for the app service using best practices for security and performance, meaning that they take care of all of the configurations and all of the nitty-gritty details behind this. So the way to go about this is to create something on this. So if I click on this, I can create in my Azure account, I can create a WordPress on service, and I need, of course, a Azure subscription. And if I don't have one, I can use a trial. I'm currently on a trial, and I have some credits when you do a trial, but then you can go use the pay-as-you-go subscription when you have more traction. And then you can also select a region where you want to put this installation of this WordPress instance, create the WordPress on app service. So you can select wherever region you think is most used by your users, and then you can select language, and you need to have an administration account to this. So this is the WordPress setup configuration, the things that we saw in the settings files. It will set an admin name, it will set an admin password, so you can be able to log into the WordPress service from this site. So be mindful also that you may want to have the Azure websites.net. It will be the name that you have. For example, if I try to use SoftPeak here, it should say that it's not available because I already have it. So maybe you find that your name is already taken. It doesn't mean the end of the world, because you can change this using DNS rerouting. So for example, I'll change this and I added to softpeak.com to my WordPress. So for this purpose, I will just add a 2 here. Now, I won't go ahead and create one, but it will create a resource group that's tied together, and it will take care of all of the things needed for this resource group. So I just need to have some kind of password. So I'll just take whatever password I have here, and I just type in something here like that. So for example, now I can click on the next one. I can see I have more things I can configure here. I think this one is really neat to have WordPress total cache. It's a plugin to WordPress that actually leverage one of the big benefits of having an Azure content delivery network. It means that it's your site is being stored in a really responsive, quick cache. So for the end user experience, this will be really fast, even though you're not using like really top high-end kind of servers or pay a premium. You can still get around with pretty basic Azure services if you use a proper CDN for this. So I can click on the next one here. I can have various tags, and I can go ahead and review and create it if I want to. But since I already have done it, I can switch back to my site here, to my home, and I can show how my configuration looks in Azure. So I see I'm sitting in Sweden, west of Europe. It's suitable for me. I created it maybe a week ago or so. So I have a couple of services here. I have an app service called SoftPeak, and I have an app service plan, and I also have a resource group tied to this. So for example, if I open up SoftPeak, I can see here tons of different things here connected. It's running on a Linux machine. So I have it configured to my plan, and I have it gives me an option of having an IP address, but I can also have in my configuration networking here. I can also see that I have another domain connected to this. So I have a domain called SoftPeak. So if I go to SoftPeak, it will show my WordPress instance immediately when I click on this. So I don't need to go to SoftPeak Azure websites.net. I can of course do that as well. It shows exactly the same thing. But here you can see I see something on the top here, which I didn't on the other one. On this one, I didn't see the WordPress configuration. That means that I have logged in as an administrator to this site. So if I want to have this kind of experience, I can go to my site, and from this site I can also type in /vp-admin. It will show me the login credentials, and I can go in. I need to be logged in, and I should use the password and the admin account I used when I logged into the previous one. So I can use it, but I can also go here so I can see in my configuration. When I have this configuration installed, I'll just close this Bing thing so we have more real estate. So I can see this kind of top thing when I'm logged in. It can see who I am and how I'm logged in. I can also see in the SoftPeak, I can go to the dashboard, and in WordPress, I can see tons of different things in the dashboard. So I have on the left-hand side, I have my updates, and I have my posts, which is my blog posts. So if, for example, if I click this one, I should be able to see I only have 2 posts right now. I have the previous chapter, the M365 overview, and the welcoming message. I can, of course, create new posts, and I can edit existing ones, and I can also do something called purge from cache. We have on top here, we have something called W3, which is a caching feature that's already configured to work with the Azure CDNs. And that's one of the really neat things with this kind of setup and performance. Below here, I also have the media, so I have can upload images and stuff like that. And I also have a concept of pages. Pages is a bit different than actual posts. So pages can be more static, and it's great if you want to create like standard websites and you don't want to create a blogging experience. You can work out of pages in that case instead. And then, of course, I have other things as well. I have the appearance, and I can change the themes. So you can see here what themes are installed. There is a bunch of themes installed out of the box inside WordPress, and I can make this site looks like anything I basically want to. I'm using a standard searchable themes called EXS Dark for now in my setup. But of course, you can find whatever type of theme you would like to have. So if you want to have something called Viking, let's say, you want to have a Viking theme, there is no themes for that. That's a pity. I thought it was existing. Let's see if we can find the dark one. It's only searching in my themes. I need to add a theme. So I add new. Then I can search here. So yeah. So here I can search for Viking. And I can see if there is a couple of Viking themes. No. Dark. Yeah, I can see if there is a bunch of themes, but you can also search on the open web, and you can find really fancy theme. Here you have the themes I have. So you can just press install if you want to have this, and then it will install in the folder where the themes was. So in the WordPress section, you have this VP content, and you have the themes. It will be install it in a folder below here. So everything included in that theme will be then downloaded to your instance. It will include all of the assets needed to be able to run that specific theme that you are installed. And the experience of how to configure this, how to customize it, is different depending on the theme and how it is configured. There's some settings that can, it's like generic for WordPress that you can set, what type of global settings you would like. But for most themes, you can customize it. You can click on this customize section. It will go to a customization page. And this is pretty intuitive. So you can see in this page, I can see various things, and I can change various sections here. For example, if I want to, I can change the images here, or I can change the title over here. And I can change the overall aesthetics if I would like icons and fonts and images and text blocks, whatever components I would like to have. With that, I think I will kind of wrap this one up for today and go back to my SoftPeak website here to be able to conclude this kind of section today. I think a follow-up section for this should be focused more around the branding and brandability of both the Microsoft 365 using vector graphics for the icons and logos and stuff. But I also wanted to focus a little bit around the WordPress experience and how to kind of build up this together in Azure and Microsoft 365 and WordPress and many more tools. But I'm also interested in hearing more from you. Do you think this is valuable content? In that case, maybe you can hit that like button and maybe subscribe to my channel here. Or you can subscribe to the newsletter as well. So you can click this newsletter section, go to SoftPeak and click on the newsletter, and you should be able to type in your email here. Nothing really will happen as of now. It will just add the email to a list. And eventually, when this site and this kind of SoftPeak concept experiment is more mature, we'll probably use this to communicate any changes or any additional information as well to this. So for now, thank you for watching, and see you all soon again. Thank you.